There's a particular kind of small panic that most people who've learned English as a second language know intimately, even if they've never described it out loud. It happens in a meeting, or across a counter with a customer, or during a coffee catch-up with a coworker who happens to talk, for whatever reason, at double the speed of everyone else in the room. They begin an idea, and their words come out fast, almost like gunfire, one sentence tumbling directly into the next before the last one has even finished landing. Your brain, doing its best, grabs onto the first three words and starts working through them carefully, methodically, the way it was trained to. But by the time it finishes decoding those three words, the speaker is already 5 sentences further down the road. A small wave of heat rises in your face. Your chest tightens slightly. And politely, carefully, you interrupt. "Sorry, could you say that again?" They smile kindly and repeat themselves, and for about 10 seconds, they slow down out of consideration, and then, almost without noticing it themselves, they drift right back to their natural rapid pace. You're lost again, except this time, something in you refuses to ask a second time, or a third. So instead, you do the thing almost everyone in this situation eventually does. You smile, you nod, you quietly hope they don't turn to you and ask a direct question, because you genuinely have no idea what you just agreed to. If this cycle sounds painfully familiar, here's the good news, and it might surprise you. The problem was never your vocabulary. You could double the number of words you know tomorrow, and this exact same panic would still find you in that same meeting, with that same fast-talking coworker. Because the real issue isn't what you know, it's the direction your brain is facing while it listens. Most learners, without ever being taught this explicitly, listen the way a tape recorder listens. Sound arrives, the brain decodes it, translates it, sometimes even internally, back into a first language, then moves on to the next sound. One word processed, then the next, always chasing what was just said, always a half step behind. Call this reactive listening. It works more or less at a comfortable, moderate pace. But the instant someone speaks quickly, genuinely quickly, that reactive system floods, jams, and effectively shuts down, because there simply isn't enough time left in each gap to fully process one word before the next 3 have already arrived. Native speakers do not listen this way. Not because they're smarter, and not because their ears are physically different. They listen this way because somewhere along the way, usually without any conscious awareness of it, their brains learned an entirely different strategy. Call it predictive listening. Instead of only processing what was just said, the native brain is constantly, quietly guessing what's coming next, before it actually arrives, based on grammar, rhythm, and the deep, practiced familiarity of how sentences in that language tend to unfold. Here is the reassuring part. You already do this, effortlessly, in your first language, every single day, without ever once thinking about it. If someone says to you, "Please turn off the," your mind instantly, automatically fills in the ending before it's spoken. Light, TV, stove. You don't sit there waiting, blank and uncertain, for the final word to physically arrive, because the shape of the sentence itself already told you, with near certainty, what was coming. The path to understanding fast English speech runs directly through building that exact same instinct in your second language. And the fastest way to build it is by learning collocations, the specific words that habitually travel together in English, forming small, predictable pairs and phrases that repeat constantly across ordinary speech. If a fast talker begins a sentence with, "We need to take," your predictive brain, once trained, should already be narrowing its guesses before the sentence finishes. Action. A break. Responsibility. If they say, "I am looking forward," your brain shouldn't need to strain at all for the next word, because it already knows, with something close to certainty, that too is coming. Once you've internalized enough of these predictable pairings, something remarkable happens to the actual workload your brain carries during a fast conversation. Instead of straining to catch every single word in a rapid sentence, 10 separate targets flying past at speed, you only need to catch 2 or 3 core anchor points. The rest, your predictive engine fills in automatically, quietly in the background, the exact same way it already does in your native tongue, but even the sharpest predictive listener will occasionally hit a genuine gap. A word blurred beyond recognition. A phrase spoken so quickly, it simply doesn't land. And here is where most learners make a costly mistake. They freeze. Their attention snags on the missing piece, and while they're mentally scrambling backward, trying to recover a word from 5 seconds ago, the live conversation keeps moving forward without them, and they lose the next several sentences entirely, chasing a ghost instead of staying present. There's a better way to handle this moment, And it comes from thinking about a fast conversation the way you'd think about a physical jigsaw puzzle. If you're assembling a puzzle and discover a single blank piece, missing entirely, you don't dismantle the whole picture in frustration. You look instead at what surrounds that gap, the colors, the curves, the pattern already forming around it. And from that surrounding context, you can usually infer, with reasonable confidence, exactly what belongs in the missing space. In conversation, those surrounding pieces have a name, context clues. And there are 3 specific types worth training yourself to notice. The first is structural signposting. Certain words exist purely to tell you the shape of what's coming, regardless of the specific content inside it. Therefore, on the other hand, basically, even if the precise detail that follows one of these words gets lost in the blur of fast speech, the signpost itself tells you the logical direction the speaker is heading. Agreement or disagreement, cause or consequence, summary or expansion. That structural information alone often carries you through a gap you might otherwise have completely lost. The second is something most learners overlook entirely, because it isn't audio at all, it's visual. Language rarely travels alone. It arrives wrapped in body language, in gesture, in the specific rise of an eyebrow or the sudden emphasis of a hand striking a table. If a fast talker rushes through an entire sentence but their eyes widen, or their hand comes down firmly on one particular word, that word is very likely the core of what they actually mean. Let the blurry, rapid background fade slightly, and lock your attention onto those high-energy focal points instead. The body, quite often, tells you exactly where the meaning is hiding. The third tool isn't about listening at all. It's about what you do the moment the fast talker finally pauses to breathe. Instead of asking them to repeat the entire rushed monologue from the beginning, something that feels, and often is, faintly humiliating, offer a micro-cybery instead. Something like, okay, so basically your main concern is the timeline, right? Or, got it, so we're moving forward with plan B. Notice the shift this creates. You are no longer the person constantly asking for things to be slowed down or repeated. You are the person actively confirming the big picture, using exactly the pieces of context you did successfully catch, which, more often than people expect, turns out to be nearly everything that actually mattered. Predictive listening and context tracking aren't fixed talents some people simply have and others don't. They're closer to physical muscles, meaning they respond directly and measurably to targeted training. And there's a specific drill built exactly for this purpose. One you can run using nothing more than a phone and a podcast app. Find a clean conversational clip of a native speaker talking naturally and follow 3 steps. Step 1. Change the playback speed. Push it up to 1.25 times normal speed, or even 1.5 times if you're feeling bold, and turn the subtitles off completely. Listen to 2 full minutes at this uncomfortable, artificially accelerated pace. Your brain, almost immediately, will feel overwhelmed, and some part of it will quietly want to give up. Push through anyway. Focus your attention entirely on catching the stressed nouns, the key verbs, and the structural signposts, exactly the way the jigsaw strategy trained you to steep to. Pause. Pull up the written transcript, or turn subtitles on while keeping the audio muted, and read through the exact text of what you just struggled to hear. Study the sentence structures carefully. Notice the collocations, the predictable word pairings your brain should have anticipated in real time, and didn't quite catch during the accelerated listen. Step 3, and this is where the real payoff arrives. Drop the playback speed back down to normal, 1 times speed, hide the subtitles again, and play that exact same 2-minute segment one more time. What happens next tends to genuinely surprise people the first time they try it. Because your brain just spent 2 straight minutes straining against artificially fast, overwhelming speech, normal conversational speed suddenly sounds slow, almost luxuriously slow, crisp, spacious, easy to follow in a way it never quite felt before. This isn't imagination or wishful thinking. It's a measurable form of cognitive adaptation, the same principle behind an athlete who trains at altitude and then feels almost superhuman once they return to sea level. Train your ears regularly against speech faster than anything you'll typically encounter in daily life, and your actual real-world processing capacity expands to match it. Step back into an office, a classroom, a crowded party, and even the fastest talker in the room will suddenly sound entirely manageable, sometimes even comfortably slow. None of this requires you to live with the quiet, simmering fear of the next fast talker who walks into your day. None of it requires you to keep carrying the small embarrassment of asking, again and again, for people to slow down or repeat themselves. Real fluency was never actually about capturing every single sound with perfect, letter-by-letter clarity. It was always about grasping the core of the message, quickly, confidently, using intelligent prediction, sharp contextual awareness, and a listening habit that leans forward into the conversation instead of scrambling to catch up behind it. So tonight, or the next time you have a spare minute, open whatever podcast or video you were already planning to watch. Push the speed up, just slightly beyond your comfort zone. Sit with the discomfort for 60 full seconds, without subtitles, without safety, and then drop it back down to normal. Notice how much room suddenly there seems to be. That relief, that unexpected spaciousness in ordinary speech is not an accident. It's the exact shape of a brain that just quietly, permanently, got faster.